In the shadow of America's founding ideals, a stark contradiction loomed large. While the nation declared itself a beacon of freedom and equality, it simultaneously upheld the brutal institution of slavery. This paradox created a deep rift in the social fabric, pitting the labor movement against the abolitionist cause. Instead of uniting under a common banner of justice, these two movements often found themselves at odds, with tragic consequences for both black and white workers. The mid-19th century was a time of intense social and political upheaval in the United States. The country was growing rapidly, fueled by waves of immigration and industrial expansion. However, this growth also brought significant challenges, particularly in the realm of labor. The influx of immigrants strained the job market, leading to competition and tension among workers. At the same time, the moral and economic issues surrounding slavery became increasingly pressing, dividing the nation along sectional lines. The Free Soil movement, which sought to prevent the expansion of slavery into new territories, and the Abolitionist movement, which aimed to end slavery altogether, could have been natural allies. Both movements shared a common goal of creating a more just and equitable society. However, their approaches and priorities diverged, leading to a fragmented and less effective fight against the injustices of the day. The Free Soilers focused on the economic challenges facing free laborers. They argued that the concentration of land and resources in the hands of a few powerful elites made it difficult for ordinary workers to find employment and secure a decent living. They saw the expansion of slavery as a threat to the economic opportunities of free laborers, particularly in the newly acquired territories. Their solution was to advocate for land reform and the distribution of public lands to small farmers and laborers, ensuring that everyone had a fair chance to succeed. On the other hand, the abolitionists were driven by a deep moral conviction that slavery was an unconscionable evil. They emphasized the human rights of enslaved individuals and the moral imperative to end the institution of slavery. While the Free Soilers were concerned with the economic well-being of free laborers, the abolitionists were focused on the fundamental wrong of one human being owning another. This moral stance often put them at odds with the more pragmatic concerns of the Free Soilers. The competition between black and white laborers further complicated the situation. In the northern states, where free African Americans and escaped slaves had established themselves as workers, the racial dynamics of the job market became a significant issue. White laborers, already feeling the pressure of immigration, saw African American workers as a threat to their economic security. This racial tension made it difficult for the two movements to find common ground, despite their shared interest in improving the lives of all workers. The reaction to the abolitionist movement was often violent and harsh. Abolitionists were attacked, their meeting places burned, and their voices silenced. Women suffragists, who often aligned with the abolitionists, faced similar hostility. Laws were proposed to make it easier to kidnap African Americans and to disenfranchise African American voters. This aggressive backlash was fueled by a combination of ignorance, fear, and the vested interests of those who benefited from the status quo. The labor movement, particularly in the northern states, was initially reluctant to engage with the issue of slavery. Many labor leaders and organizations believed that the immediate concerns of white workers took precedence over the long-term goal of ending slavery. They argued that the economic stability of white workers was more important than the moral imperative to free African Americans. This short-sighted approach ultimately weakened the labor movement, as it failed to recognize the broader social and economic implications of slavery. Despite these challenges, there were moments of unity and progress. In the 1850s, new labor leaders like Herman Kriege and Wilhelm Weitling brought socialist and communist ideas to the United States, advocating for land reform and workers' rights. However, even these leaders were divided on the issue of slavery. Kriege, for example, openly repudiated abolition, arguing that it would harm the economic interests of white workers. Weitling, while not explicitly supporting slavery, paid little attention to the issue in his labor activism. The Arbeiterbund, a socialist organization founded in 1853, initially took a strong stance against slavery, but its position became more ambiguous over time. In 1857, the organization reorganized and did not mention slavery in its platform. It was not until 1859 that the Arbeiterbund explicitly condemned slavery and called for the repeal of the fugitive slave law. This hesitation and inconsistency reflected the broader divisions within the labor movement. The influence of the British labor movement, particularly the Chartists, provided a contrasting example. The Chartists were clear in their opposition to slavery and regularly criticized the United States for its failure to live up to its democratic ideals. This international pressure eventually had some impact, as seen in the 1857 anti-slavery address signed by 1,800 English workingmen and sent to the United States. However, the influence of these international voices was limited, and the American labor movement remained largely divided on the issue. The outbreak of the Civil War in 1861 brought many of these tensions to a head. Despite the initial reluctance of many labor organizations to engage with the issue of slavery, the war forced a reckoning. The labor movement began to recognize that the fight for free labor and the fight against slavery were interconnected. The victory of the Union and the eventual abolition of slavery marked a significant turning point, but the legacy of racial division and economic inequality continued to shape American society. In the end, the failure of the labor and abolitionist movements to unite in the mid-19th century had far-reaching consequences. The divisions and tensions of that era continue to influence American politics and society today. The struggle for a more just and equitable society is ongoing, and the lessons of the past remind us that unity and solidarity are essential in the fight for justice. The road to a more perfect union is long and fraught with challenges, but the pursuit of freedom and equality remains a noble and necessary endeavor.